Engines rock through the iron night. We're pawns in someone else's fight. Debian sends us but won't explain who stands as friend, who falls as prey. Signals scrambled, orders blur. Who's the hunter, who's the cur? Steel and shadows, we march alone. What's the mission, who's the foe? Cat goes crying, the world in flames. Tell me why, tell me names. Maps that twist like a liar's tongue. We fight but don't know what's begun. Damien's whispers a cryptic dance. Who profits from this grim romance? Are we mercs or marionettes? Chasing shadows, cashing debts. They play gods, we're their schemes. Chasing someone else's dreams. Fear and shadows, we march alone. What's the mission, who's the foe? Cat goes crying, the world in flames. Tell me why, tell me names. Signals scrambled, orders blur. Who's the hunter, who's the cur? Fear and shadows, we march alone. What's the mission, who's the foe? Cat goes crying, the world in flames. Tell me why, tell me names. Maps that twist like a liar's tongue. We fight but don't know what's begun. Damien's whispers a cryptic dance. Who profits from this grim romance? Tell me names. Tell me.
Steel fist pound on the gates of dawn. Which side of this war am I leaning on? My cockpit shakes, my sensors scream. This battlefield's a fever dream. Is it death to my rank or glory to my rank? War bug fights but the lines are blurred. Glory to the fallen or vengeance serves. Death to the name that I can't confirm. War bug rides and the engines burn. Radar's fine, can't see the crest. Who's my ally, who's my pest? Paint jobs fade in the smoky haze. My loyalty's lost in this mech maze. Is it death to my rank or glory to my rank? War bug fights but the lines are blurred. Glory to the fallen or vengeance serves. Death to the name that I can't confirm. War bug rides and the engines burn. Radar's fine, can't see the crest. Who's my ally, who's my best? Paint jobs fade in the smoky haze. My loyalty's lost in this mech maze. Is it death to my rank or glory to my rank?
War bugs.
War bug fights, but the lines are blurred. Glory to the fallen or vengeance serves. Death to the name that I can't confirm. War bug rides and the engines burn.
Guys, how is it going?
And the engines burn.
Yes, things always get worse. It's time for Battletech Tuesday. It's time to slap a grot. It's time for all of this kind of stuff. Sarah, how's it going? Blitz, what's up, bud? Epic, guys. So, if you had a chance to check out the Martin Cito Pants video before this, we had a bit of a bad day yesterday. It is something that I didn't want to talk about last night when I was actually recording. It took me a while to get to recording, honestly. It took me a good little while to get to recording because of what happened. If any of you follow the Hospitalist channel, you will know one of our ducks was named Pickles, and we were worried about Pickles. We were worried about Pickles for quite a long time now, about 4 months. Pickles was something called a jumbo pecking duck, and she was never supposed to live as long as she did. In the hospital, they took amazing care of her, but we had been concerned for a bit because she was so big. She was basically, her breed is mainly made for meat. That's what they are made for. And what wound up happening was about 4 months ago, she got to the point where she was so large she couldn't support her own weight. Now, that happens with ducks that are, bred specifically for meat production. In fact, there's a breed of chicken called the Cornish Cross that we will not get because the animal has no quality of life, and that's not what we wanted. We didn't know that Pickles is going to be a jumbo picking, but it just wound up being that way. When she was sold to us, we didn't know that at all, but we took care of her and everything like that. We did the best that we could for her, and unfortunately for us and for Pickles, she wound up, unfortunately, when an animal basically drags itself along the ground like she was having to, something eventually will happen. And it wound up happening, and there was nothing we could do about it. It just is what it is with that. Now, I will say it as honestly as I can. My wife has wanted to do homesteading for a very, very long time now. And inevitably, when you do take care of a lot of animals, inevitably something is going to happen, and something is going to occur, and there's nothing you can do about it. And yesterday we had to take care of Pickles in the only way that was really a way that we could at that point. Pickles had developed a very extremely bad infection, and the bad part about it was in an area that we had just finished building their very large enclosure, and she had been out in it, and we had no way to see it, that she even had an issue, because she was moving around normally. We had no way of seeing that she had actually had an issue until she went into an area where the grass wasn't so tall, and then we both really noticed something was wrong, and we were left with no real option. And when you take care of animals, sometimes these things are going to happen, no matter how many precautions you take or what happens, especially when you're dealing with an animal such as Pickles was, where, quite simply put, she was not meant to live as long as she did. She was, simply put, not meant to live as long as she lived. She was a specific breed that was bred specifically for meat. But we kept her about 4 months longer than she normally would have lived anyway. She ate grapes every day. She was out there. Her primary enclosure was at a grapevine. She ate grapes every day. She got to play in water every day. She got to eat bugs every day. She had the best duck life she could possibly lived. And at the end of the day, I'm very, very happy that we got to have her for the time that we did. But if you were wondering what happened, that would be it. That's why I looked the way that I did last night when I was actually filming my reaction to Martin Cito Pants. And so I said I might talk about it tonight, and that's pretty much it. So if you guys if you're in the Discord, please send a kind word the Hospitaler's way, because she took it really hard. She took it very, very hard. And she really doesn't deserve as hard as she's been on herself for this. She really doesn't. She did so well for this duck. She made sure that this duck lived the best life it possibly could. With all that being said, though, if you were wondering why I was kind of despondent last night if you saw the Martin Cito Pants reaction video earlier today, that was why. Was server-based AI taking over abandoned LA that evac'd due to salt and nuke bombings being a net improvement for the city? Me, what are you talking about, dude? Oh my god. I don't know. I don't know if it will be a net improvement or not. I have no idea. But yeah, I'm sorry to break the news like that. It is what it is. But the thing about it is, when you're homesteading, things like this are going to happen. And if y'all would, please send some love the Hospitallers' way, because like, she is an amazing woman. And it doesn't matter how, obvious his conclusion it was at that point. She really did take it to heart. Guys, sorry for starting off the stream that way, but I'm telling you guys what. Hold on a second. What is this? Yeah, Sank Healy always sending me stuff in Discord, not in Discord, but Steam. Guys, today you guys have been asking me to look at this forever. Okay, since it dropped. This is Big Red-40TECH Battletech Gothic. Now, I don't know what this is about. You guys have dropped me little subtle hints, but I don't know. Do I think that SCP-53 will make it to the end of the SCP-001? I have no idea. I have not the faintest clue. I really don't. I don't know what Battletech Gothic is about. We're going to find out from the mouth of the boy. Big Red-40TECH. Guys, Big Red-40TECH, I'm telling you, he does a live stream every night. You guys got to go check him out after you get out here with me. And let's just jump in here. The Gothic looks like the Stone Rhino. Oh, it's a mech. Sweet. Alfarius, how are you doing? Alfarius, you have not yet I don't think you've met your namesake yet. Warpugs, let's jump right into this. Let's have a little bit of fun. It's Battletech Tuesday. Let's go, Warpugs. Battletech 42 million. Yep. Thank you, Pilo. Oh, okay, Alfaris.
I was sent a box of Battletech Gothic to review, which will be included in this video.
Oh.
I, however, don't believe in free rides as far as products are concerned if I'm going to review them. And therefore have donated its MSRP to the BC SPCA. With that, let's go over just about everything.
And see, this is the other problem at the hospital, is she picks up animals all the time. She picks up animals all the time. All the time!
Battletech is a truly iconic setting.
I have no idea,
It is
Chase.
a world that takes inspiration from many sources, but creates something truly unique. Inevitably is the story of mankind, thrust into the stars, and continuing to be its own worst enemy.
Of course.
The battle mechs are just a part of that story, and a vehicle to play within the world.
Yay!
But the setting is truly dominated by human interests and human stories. Humans have done awful things to one another in real life.
Yeah.
And this has created a franchise that can be quite dark at times, with each superstate within being far from perfect as a result. But what if the essence of this plotline, what if the essence of this story was reimagined?
Oh?
And twisted into something deliberately darker and more merciless? What if it was combined with a sci-fi fantasy theme that increased the horror well beyond what humans have done into something more twisted?
Oh boy.
Let's find out together as we explore a familiar world, yet reimagined, that is a part of Catalyst's plan for a continuum series. Battletech Gothic.
Oh boy. This looks... I'm braced. What is the continuum?
I think it's important to get this out of the way first.
Okay.
What is the Continuum series? The bones of this idea first appear in Empire of Flame, an RPG module produced in 2014. In this particular idea, the Inner Sphere has an event that changes the timeline, creating a massively different set of circumstances within Battletech than what most people would expect.
Okay.
The Terran supremacy rules the center of the Inner Sphere, and the periphery powers are larger. And some states even merge, such as the Federated Suns and the Capellan Confederation, or the Magistracy of Canopus and the Taurian Concordat. This is a non-canon, alternate take on events that was released for free as a PDF for people to enjoy. But it very much seems to be the template for what's started to arrive now. Catalyst appears comfortable enough with where the game is to try their hand at this kind of idea, but throwing some real resources at it. Battletech Gothic is the first of the official Continuum series, a once more non-canon interpretation of the Battletech universe with some very different states and outcomes. And there are intentions to follow this up with other products in the same vein.
Jeremy, it's not exactly a surprise that Davian would be in bed with somebody else. I'm just saying. I mean, think about it logically. If you were going to think about the Davians screwing over somebody besides themselves, who would it be? Anyone.
There are plans for robots with ray guns as one spin-off, and another centered around anime mechs, as well as a potential World War II diesel tech example too. But why, you may ask? It gives people access to something a little different, and I suspect it's fun for the people involved in these particular projects. It seems to be much like what Magic the Gathering does with sets from other franchises. Only in this case, Battletech is making their own non-canon homages to explore a similar function. So in essence, Continuum is designed as a series of box sets, in new takes on the Battletech universe, to build up expansions that will give people reimagined classic battle mechs. It's a cool idea overall, but let's check in on its execution.
The fuck?
Yes. Yes! I've done it! Mad am I, Darwin! Fool! You are to be a spectator to creation, while I have become the creator! Mr. Sinister, from the X-Men animated series.
Yes. Like, how much of an edgelord do you have to be if you name yourself Mr. Sinister? Really, bruh? Oh, no way. This is...
Fascinating.
Really? Really?
Despite the intentional grim-dark nature of it, Battletech Gothic borrows very heavily from Battletech in terms of its origins and even the politics in it. But there are several critical, fundamental changes that throw the entire universe eventually onto a different, far more sinister course. For you see, battle mechs did not emerge in the Age of War independently in Gothic. No, they were there to fight a threat born of the mutilated minds of the leadership in none other than the Free Worlds League.
Oh yeah, baby!
It's going to be a bit of a journey to get this all together for you, but we're going to start from the very beginning. The Age of War, only in Gothic. Humanity's journey to the stars seems so familiar. The Terran Alliance ruled all of mankind until it unravels due to the contradictions of its political system and its loss of power over ever more important distant worlds that would not be ruled from Earth. The first great empire amongst the stars faded and died, and was replaced by a new one, the Terran hegemony. Ruling over the state was none other than House Cameron, but they faced competition from the other great houses that formed in the aftermath of the Alliance's implosion. War emerged as a specter within the power vacuum left behind, just as one would expect.
As one does.
Nations coalesced together to form stronger ones, in order to conquer their weaker, mutual enemies. The first to truly emerge in all of this was not the Terran hegemony in House Cameron either. No.
What?
The first interstellar juggernaut to appear was none other than the Free Worlds League, led at first by House Merrick.
Okay.
The state would be swept away before the end of the Age of War, however, and the Merricks of the Merrick Commonwealth would be subdued by their former allies, House Salage. The Regulant Fiefs. The League was now ruled by the High Prince of Regulus, and it went from being a league to the Collective of the Violent Crux. But it was they.
The Collective of the Violet Crux? Somebody keep him away because he's so edgy.
Who made the first great military advancement of humanity since the advent of mechanized warfare.
Okay.
By creating something which should have never been forged. Because House Salage had created a true horror within their realm.
Okay.
Something which made even their own allies nervous prior to their takeover of the League. The Regulant Fiefs had employed one Josiah Meddleson, a xenobiologist, after he discovered a means of splicing together multiple animal traits into a single new being. This
Meddleson?
technique eventually became known as grafting.
Oh,
And
God.
how Salage quickly weaponized it. The public was outraged by the, quote, mad scientist of Regulus, unquote, as he was known. But their complaints fell on deaf ears, as far as ambitious military leaders were concerned. Abominations became a myriad number of monstrosities built biologically to serve various interests inside of the Free Worlds League. And then the technology proliferated from there. But these chimeric monsters have a darker side to them, as they are not always mere animals, or beasts turned to human cause. They are sometimes humans themselves, turned into weapons or even beasts of burden. Some people are simply just unfortunate. They are people who had no medical choice but to accept grafting in order to survive grievous injuries or organ transplants, while others were victims of biochemical attacks, which turned whole populations into mutated monstrosities.
Yay.
For many, this is a fate as terrible as death, as they are often seen, when in this new form, as no longer being truly human. Those unfortunate enough to be forced into such circumstances are typically referred to as the Frayed.
Okay.
To truly understand how they are made, there is a passage I'll read to all of you now.
Please do.
At the core of all abominations are the modified xenogenetic infusions commonly referred to as grafting. A twisted masterpiece of bioscience, grafting employs a series of adaptive, omnomorphic parasites, otherwise known as AOPs, to fuse traits together from multiple life forms into a single organism, regardless of biological incompatibilities. Instead of scientists tailor-editing the genes of a single creature in a lab to create a viable hybrid, the AOPs used in grafting shortcut the process thanks to their ability to absorb and replicate neighboring biostructures.
So they patented it, put it on the side of a plastic lunchbox, and now we're selling it. We're selling it.
While retaining their own distinctiveness as they grow. The results work as a kinfog cellular cement that facilitates a near seamless surgical bonding of biological features from other life forms, even if such forms come from radically different species or ecosystems.
Sweet.
Otherwise land-dwelling, mammalian host structures can thus be granted reptilian scales, or living tree bark, or an extra tough hide, while also receiving gills or an amphibian respiratory system for extended underwater operations.
So the Mennonites did not win in this particular thing. The scientists of Jurassic Park did.
This also says nothing of the additional cybernetic
Pinky!
augmentations and weaponry that are applied to the now monstrous creatures that are pushed into service of corporate or military masters.
Good God,
Most
all right.
abominations, save for those of human origin, require handlers as well, in order to keep the beasts on task. This
Sweet.
innovation, if we choose to call it that, changed the world of Gothic in a multitude of ways, diverging it radically from the core setting of Battletech. But it is also the key reason for the emergence of the battle mech, because as these monsters were being unleashed upon the people of the Inner Sphere, the Terran hegemony innovated and built the Battletech to respond to this terrifying, abominable threat. After the formation of the Star League, albeit with a few different actors like House Salage instead of House Merrick, eventually the League banned the usage of abominations for military purposes, and openly tried to cease the use of these monsters, with mechs taking on obvious roles as being the primary war machines of their age, having outcompeted the inhuman and barbaric practices around these poor creatures. After the Ameris betrayal and the collapse of the Star League, the Endless War began, plunging mankind into a hell which it is yet to emerge from. House Salage and the other great houses, unfortunately, displayed that these creatures had been kept in their back pocket as a potential ace up their sleeves. Between horrid biogenic weapon attacks, nuclear assaults, monsters, any other sinister technology any major state could grasp, and giant battle mechs, the conditions of warfare are beyond a little grim in this Gothic-inspired setting. And the state of humanity, perhaps, is even more so.
So the Merricks have become the Drakari. Alright. Oh boy.
Madness is something rare in individuals, but in groups, parties, peoples, and ages, it is the rule. Friedrich Nietzsche.
The great nations
The
of
more
the
things
dark
change,
world.
the more they stay the same. But in this case, I suppose,
I know Merrick didn't do it, but it's still funny to say it's all Merrick's fault.
not entirely. Many of the players are in a similar place, or have similar allegories, but they are not, in fact, those who they were before.
Right.
The history of events outside of Abominations and the Free Worlds League truly diverge permanently with the collapse of the Star League inside of the world of Gothic, and do so fantastically by this point. Familiar countries become unfamiliar, and some were changed altogether. Even historic unions, such as the Federated Commonwealth, are made impossible by the realities of the stellar politics of this dark age of human conflict. So, who are the most powerful states of the human sphere in this grim, dark twist of mankind's fate? What befell the Draconis Combine, you may wonder? As with most nations in Gothic, they did once exist in their Battletech form, with the Combine being formed under Shiro Kurita. However, this was not to last. In the aftermath of the collapse of the Star League, the Eternal War already having started, the Draconis Combine engaged in one of the darkest and most brutal campaigns in history. And this culminated in the Kentaris Massacre. However, Kentaris was not viewed as a mark of shame in the world of Gothic. After the assassination of Jinjiro Kurita, heir to the Combine on this world, the people here who resisted the dragon were butchered by abominations, battle mechs, and orbital bombardments.
So Jinjiro dies in this one.
As the DCMS took its revenge at the behest of the coordinator, Minoru Kurita. In the aftermath of this massacre, that was almost a celebration of violence, the Draconis Combine renamed itself and reforged its identity as the Draconic Imperium.
Oh
This
god.
transition was viewed as a commemoration, and with this transformation, Minoru went from being a coordinator of a Combine to the Emperor of an Imperium.
Oh boy. Hey, Random. Are you going to watch Melody Sheep soon? I've been waiting for you to see it. Also, I'll waste every single government benefits I have until I see you react to it. Random, I put it out on your birthday, my guy. It's already out. I put it out on your birthday, my guy. You told me it was going to be your birthday. Just saying, it's up. Thanks, bud.
This had a dramatic response around the inner sphere as the Kuritans celebrated the bloodletting.
Oh.
But within the Combine, The House began to indulge in
Thanks,
the
Random.
war in ways they never did during the real succession wars. Their initial gains during this campaign were degraded over the centuries as exhaustion and fatigue ever slowed them down.
Why are they killing the Crute? I mean, not that I have a problem with it, but they're killing the Crute and the Vespid. I really don't have... I don't have a problem with this.
The fighting simply continued on, despite industrial decline and destruction. By the 31st century, much like the rest of the human sphere, the Imperium has seen its population badly brutalized, mutated, and even exterminated.
Oh, okay, that seems
But they
familiar.
remain unbowed. Their intention is very much the military conquest of the inner sphere, for their very warrior-dominated shogunate-inspired culture. Their mech warriors retain a strong edge, one they'd had since the days of the Star League. But there are more than merely samurai-inspired warriors at the Emperor's side. The DCMS evolved into the SPD, or the Soldiers of the Blood Dragon, after the formation of the Draconic Imperium.
Okay.
They are considered amongst the most brutal standing armies remaining in human space. They do have specific terms used for their abominations,
Okay.
and for their frayed units. Abominations, or units they are a part of, are often referred to as yokai, or spirits, whereas frayed are referred to as yuri, or ghosts.
Okay.
Many of their abominations are
We're getting edgy, guys. We're getting kind of edgy. Let's go.
deliberately styled after the mythological demons or other creatures from ancient Japanese folklore, and this is done deliberately to attempt to increase their terror and to increase the mystique that their opponents will feel.
Okay, Kurita, you went from okay, halfway decent to tips fedora, my sword, my lady.
These creatures, along with their handlers, are drilled as intensely as the rest of the SPD soldiers and mech warriors. Though, most misfortunately, the Yuri are made up of people who were directly experimented on.
Oh, joy.
Purpose, in many instances. Criminals and other undesirables are often mutilated into these unfortunate forms, and then given the roles of shock troops. To their own commanders, they are more expendable than abominations, and they are considered subhuman. To
Nice.
be in a Yuri unit is a death sentence. It makes sense that they are called ghosts, because truthfully they are already dead.
No joy.
Much as with anything in this dark, reimagined history, the former Combine is a grimmer, more vicious analog to its counterpart.
So Kurita has gone full weeb. Kurita has gone full weeb, and not even fun weeb. They haven't gone ecchi weeb. They've gone full on dark fantasy weeb. Okay. Oh.
Freedom among the Federated Suns is an idea in the world of Battletech, and one which has often had the honor of giving the perception that House Davian and their allies are in fact the quote good guys, unquote, of the setting. Sometimes even dubiously, depending on their actions. In Gothic, things are more outwardly different.
Okay.
The messaging has changed, and the soft velvet hand perhaps more resembles the iron fist that has always dwelt within. The realm itself came together in many of the same instances, as you might imagine, in its early years. Though in Gothic, the Fed Sons were decidedly more focused on being an Arthurian take on things. With the Federated Suns' poor last years in the Star League, and the collapse of the League itself, things took on a notably different character in the aftermath of it.
Hooray.
In 2787, the Draconis Combine launched a massive, bloody campaign into the Suns, spanning the entire border region. The Suns had been preparing themselves, as everyone knew the Star League had been in its final days for, ironically, decades, even prior to the Ameris betrayal. However, this was not enough. The Federated Suns took shocking losses due to strategic errors. Kataris was raised, and legions of abominations, once illegal in the Star League, were unleashed upon them. But the celebration of the Combine's victory on Kataris would be cut short, as despite their own acceptance of it, the now Draconic Imperium had made an eternal enemy across their border, and had hardened the resistance within the Federated Suns.
Oh, big surprise. They do something terrible, and it's like, why do they hate us so much?
The March Lord families of Hasek, Sandoval, and Davian reaffirmed their noble partnership and proclaimed that their holdings were the realm of the blazing light. This was designed to be an inspiration to their own people,
Oh no.
proclaiming their purity, and it was also meant to be a warning against their enemies. The Federated Sons themselves were rechristened into the Shining Kingdoms of Avalon henceforth. The endless war proved that this new level of determination and hope would see them through to reclaiming much of what they had lost to the dragon as well. The Shining Kingdom is heavily rooted in many of the Western European states of old, culturally, that is, but particularly leans closely into the ancient empires of Britain and France. The society is heavily stratified, with the elites having spun things in such a way that they are perceived as being the only ones who can guide people towards a better tomorrow.
Of course.
Though, even with this being the case, there are some who can rise above their station and still achieve a greater role for themselves within the society.
Yes, serve the state, serve the king. You'll be fine. Don't worry, he's just currently pounding. I can't!
But how frequent this advancement is can be left up to some interpretation.
Yeah.
With all of this in mind, the Marches
Serum.
became functional kingdoms, and their March Lords, kings. The once title of First Prince metamorphized into what is now regarded as the High King. With the most romanticized vision of feudalism in mind, apparently, this new Avalon-centered state outwardly, at a minimum, attempts to show its virtues. The warriors who fight for said kingdom are supposed to be shining examples of these virtues as well.
Oh boy.
For you see, there is no armed forces of the Federated Sons.
Oh really?
But instead, in its place, is the glorious Defenders of Avalon. Recruiting is open to all citizens, and it is a mechanism for social advancement for anyone regardless of class or background. Inevitably, though, the best academies, those chosen by the elite, will result in their progeny achieving the highest status within the army, or at least doing so with the greatest of ease. Common people aren't given the same privilege.
Of course not. Because you don't want to be sitting there as a noble next to all these dirty peasants.
Military built around combined arms, with tanks, infantry, abominations, and battle mechs being the core of it. Mech warriors and abominations are still the most important asset within the military, regardless. In fact, within the kingdom itself, the GDA seems to have become increasingly reluctant to use the tormented creatures known as abominations.
Okay.
Though they still find them yet indispensable to warfare, despite this fact.
Hey, Willie.
Monstrosities, as they are referred to locally, clash quite extensively with the reputation that the kingdom has fostered for itself among its own people and the military.
Cool.
Though this has had the strange result of their abominations being extremely well kept by the standards of the day, with the creatures being treated humanely.
Oh, Christ.
Even if the general populace views them as horrid, unnatural spawns born into a world only to suffer and bring about the doom of man.
Yay.
Much like the Imperium, though, there has been an attempt to cultivate the creatures that embody the noble spirit of mythology that Davian wants to inhabit, even if this still doesn't entirely work for their public image all the same.
What?
The Frayed, too, see more consideration given to them, but it is often tinged with pity.
Joyous.
House Liao remains unchanged in this grimdark setting.
House Liao backstabbed themselves in this setting. It's nice.
Every bit as vile and sinister as their canonical counterparts, and we shan't waste any more time on them as a result.
Yay!
Okay, well maybe we'll spend a few minutes here.
Oh, come on!
Held in contempt by many, the Capellan Confederation, much like its peer nations, followed a similar trajectory as its main timeline counterpart. There are some subtle differences, such as the Ares Accord being at first introduced due to abominations rather than other events. The greatest tragedy, however, was early in its history. The Confederation, in 2451, suffered a coup attempt. Chancellor Duncan Liao was captured and was forcibly mutated with a top-secret, strength-augmenting graft. This was done to expose the Confederation's own research regarding the fledgling biotech, which was prohibited within their own conceptualized Ares Convention. This permanently corrupted the genes of the Chancellor with alien DNA,
Oh, joy!
transforming him into a hideous monster. He was declared unfit to rule by his sister Jasmine Liao, who assumed the throne and crushed the rebels,
Nice.
before beginning a series of purges within her own populace. Almost every scientist or doctor who specialized in grafting was rounded up and executed for what had befallen the prior Chancellor as well. Duncan survived all of this, as well as his sister's reign of terror. Though the Confederation fell behind in military technology as compared to their peers as a result. Eventually, Duncan began to rule from the shadows after his sister's death, and did so through his nephew, Hendrik Liao. Hendrik, who learned from his uncle as much as he was directly guided by him, took full power of the Confederation with his uncle's passing, and created the Order of Duncan, which stated that the Confederation formally recognized those with frayed blood as being fully human.
But the question is, do they give you better coffee?
Deserving all of the rights and dignities afforded to them. This was, of course, a very humane act, but also normalized grafting. By the time the Confederation joined the Star League, grafting was normalized amongst humans to the point where many actively chose to do this practice to themselves for medical benefits or for lifestyle purposes. The Confederation, once most doggedly opposed to grafting, even during the Star League, quietly became its greatest proponent. When the League collapsed, the Confederation participated in what would normally have been called the Succession Wars. Their own campaigns had proved bloody and unproductive, and by the early 29th century, Ilsa Liao renounced her family's claim to the First Lordship of the Star League. She went on to offer peace deals with all of her neighbors, who then took this as a sign of weakness, and unfortunately it resulted in yet more intense conflicts. The Confederation survived this onslaught, but it was not forgiven, and it would elicit the most dangerous of responses. On the home front during the darkest times for the Confederation, the Chancellor began a massive grafting program, aimed principally at her own citizens. Water supplies, food, and crops were all spoiled by AOPs in areas that may have fallen to invaders, resulting in millions dying, but also in millions becoming bestial, powerful defenders to their homes. This was bolstered by House Liao broadcasting non-stop propaganda dehumanizing anyone who was not a citizen of the Capellan state.
Sweet!
Within a decade, the Confederation was filled with endless hordes of anti-everyone-else fanatics.
Isn't this just Karita naturally?
Who were driven to a belief that the entire human sphere were their enemies.
Karita.
And they could only survive if they were destroyed.
Karita.
Ilsa Liao herself, when challenged on this by the Capellan Protectorate, responded by disbanding all political opposition to her rule, and forcibly grafting all of her political adversaries and opponents.
That's sweet.
She announced that all of humanity within the Confederation, unaltered or frayed, noble or peasant, should never break faith with their golden unity.
Okay.
In fact, the Confederation was by 2830 officially renamed to that very title, the Golden Unity.
You're next to the Federated Suns. Their color is as close to gold as it gets. The hell's wrong with you?
And a new political body was also formed within it for legislation and governance.
What the hell, man?
This was named the House of the Celestial Throne. To everyone outside of House Liao, it seemed as though they had gone quite mad. The CCAF after this mutated into the United Armed Forces, or UAF. Unlike most of their counterparts, militarily they have not transformed substantially. Defensive warfare, insurgency expertise, and making do with limited resources compared to their enemies are all par for the course.
Now, I didn't know that the Pellans, they managed to actually recruit Zilla from 1997's Godzilla. Where's Matthew Broderick?
The biggest difference comes from the fact that the UAF fully embraces abomination warfare in a way that most of their peers simply do not. The Fray too make up a huge section of their military, and are embraced eagerly in many cases, by the most die-hard followers of the Golden Unity, as even House Liao's bloodline has been blessed by newly acquired alien genetics,
Joy!
embracing and indulging in the most depraved act, at least by the opinion of most other states.
House Liao is led by a snake. Ain't that a bitch?
In the human sphere, hypocritically or not. The merchants of the Lyran Commonwealth, too, have changed.
Okay.
And apparently brutally so.
Who knows,
In this
Jeremy?
age of depraved desolation. The real changes to the Commonwealth, though, don't appear until after the Star League's collapse, during the endless war that emerged in its wake. The most brutal man in the history of the Commonwealth has always been Claudio Steiner. He deposed his predecessor and enacted purges against the realm of anyone who challenged his rule, all while disbanding the Estates General and any opposition. Worse, when the internal disruptions he caused by being so ruthless in his rule left the state open to attack by the Draconic Imperium, he opted to use nuclear and biological weapons on them at scale, as his defenders fell back, often deploying them on once loyal Lyran worlds even, planets that had been captured by a faltering army. Rather than showing any sign of particular disloyalty, he annihilated whole swathes of space, including much of the former Tamarpak's original worlds, simply to halt the dragon's advance. Inevitably, through his use of warships and weapons of mass destruction, as well as turning some of his own planets into plague-infested, abomination and frayed hellholes.
Yay!
The Imperium was driven back, but at an enormous cost. And things were only worse elsewhere as ground was lost to other powers after the deadly exchange between the former Combine and the Commonwealth. In fact, much of the border with Karita was spoiled by his strategies, making many planets uninhabitable regardless. He was
Okay.
deposed in the aftermath by his daughter Elizabeth. The state had been plunged into political, social, and economic chaos by her father, and it was now her problem to address. She instituted the Military Disaster Decree of 2863 and nationalized almost all military forces within the Commonwealth.
Okay.
She also later declared that she would heal the nation from her father's mismanagement.
Oh boy. Dragonfruit, why'd you think that, bud?
And that it would become ironclad
Oh,
forever.
yes.
The
Yes!
Commonwealth did recover, and over the coming decade, it would come to reflect its new demeanor. In 2870, it became the Ironclad Alliance. The title of Archon was upgraded into Grand Archon.
Oh.
By the way. Another interesting point is that this new iteration of House Steiner has also become increasingly devoted to a religious ideal, albeit one centered mostly within their own state.
Okay. Why am I not surprised? Why am I not surprised? They have gold on their mechs, and their mechs look stupid. Their house mechs look stupid, and they have gold on them. Am I surprised? No.
Eisenkirk. This particular entity indeed promises to purify the souls of those within the state. Empowered by a crisis and rallying around it, the Alliance has become as hardened as its deadly neighbors. Militarily, the new iteration of the LCAF, the Ironclad Defense Corps, or IDC, resembles its Lyran peer quite closely. Officers are almost always from supposedly elite institutions that require substantial resources to join, though the quality of the average soldier seems to be higher than their traditional Lyran counterparts. In regards to their employment of abominations, or monsterkin as they are referred to, the Lyran
Monsterkin? God, I love it.
spare no expense in growing the most sophisticated creatures they can, using resources and care to get the best results. This has led to some strange outcomes, though, where people, particularly the handlers in these crafts, grow attached to the misshapen animals they have cultivated, and often treat them far better than in other states, barring the Golden Unity. There are even instances of their beast handlers being willing to die, or lose their military careers, attempting to save the beasts.
Oh, good
While by
lord.
contrast, the general public often think little of the creature's sentience. Some even go as far as to describe those who care this much as bleeding hearts, but they are rarely the ones in the trenches. One of the two states that are most altered from their canon counterparts, the Collective of the Violent Crux, the offshoot of the Free Worlds League, is a dramatically different place in regards to its history and role in the setting.
Okay.
As discussed earlier, it was they who created abominations in the first place, and it was House Solage that defeated House Merrick in an internal struggle for power, throwing it, and the other houses loyal to it, to the wayside, as they reforged the Free Worlds League into their own new order. House Solage's replacement of House Merrick changes an enormous amount, but we're not given quite as much detail to understand just how much of a complete stand-in they are in many of the events. With that said, the Eternal Dynasty played everyone against one another, from the periphery to the other Star League powers, as they attempted to amass more for themselves and to mask their real agendas. However, in the 27th century, internal Free Worlds League tensions reached a fever pitch as the Merricks attempted to seize power once more.
Okay.
In 2678, after an assassination using a bomb, Rajneesh Salaj, who survived where their father had not, was installed. Rajneesh, though, required extensive grafting in order to survive, and thus was no longer biologically as human as he once was.
Okay.
Raj went on a quest to annihilate any opposition to his rule, spending decades purging the Free Worlds League of opposition. He also tackled the systemic corruption he blamed for enabling resistance to the rule of the Prime Minister of Regulus. The Merricks and their allies were stripped of all of their remaining power, and were exiled or jailed, and their properties and titles were awarded to Solage loyalists. A new constitution followed these great decades of progress as well.
Great decades of progress. That's a fucking leap.
The Free Worlds League evolved into the Collective of the Violent Crux.
Lovely.
This new state, in the Constitution, legally bound the bloodline of the leadership of the Solages as well, which resulted in them being declared the Endless Dynasty. Regulus itself became the true home for power in the former League, even if on paper Atreus was still where the legislative branch of the government resided. When the Star League collapsed, the Endless Dynasty ordered the reactivation of their abomination forces. They'd been secretly breeding whole armies. But given their history with the technology, this was not a surprise. In the centuries that followed their entry into the Endless War, they have seen rises and falls, though they've apparently lost as many systems to the supposed corruption that House Solage sought to tame, versus outward-facing foes themselves. In regards to their new title, instead of Prime Minister or Captain General, the leader of House Solage is the High Prince. And this prince must be descended from House Solage itself by blood. The Solages quietly make extensive use of grafts, too, which has extended their lifespans, making many of these High Princes live well past a century.
Okay.
Ironically, despite the Solages being frayed, with this almost being an open secret, the general public and legislators consider the common person who is frayed, or even a soldier, to be little more than a contemptuous organism to be abused or ignored. To not be a pure human, either cybernetically or biomechanically, means the person in question has a moral failing or personal shortcoming.
Yep. Go figure. 1000% go figure on that.
And if they are the victim of circumstances or required this technology to survive. This originates from the Crux's people also having seen the extremes grafting has been taken to in many other states, or from their own projects run amok. Ironically, the state that created grafting has a public that is perhaps most against it. Militarily, the Free Worlds League military was replaced.
Yes, Jeremy.
And in a very real way, by the CMDC, or the Collective Military Defense Command. This reflects the canonical FWLM in many ways, having evolved out of the Ducal Army system over time. It has, however, unlike its canon counterpart, become a streamlined and well-equipped, centrally governed army, and one renowned for its merit-based advancements. It is not as polished or as flexible as the Shining Kingdom's forces, nor as ruthless as the Draconic Imperium's.
Okay.
It does not have nearly the technology of Terra Noir's USAG, nor the heavy assault formations of the Ironclad Alliance. Its abomination technology is
There's the Avalon.
superb, but it is not close to the Golden Unities. This has resulted in them being considered the most average of the House militaries. But truth be told, this is probably one of the better outcomes for it. It has strengths where others do not, regardless of who it faces, and in multiple aspects. It simply will never specialize too greatly to be overwhelmingly in one camp. Abominations in the CMDC are of particularly high quality, though they don't quite reach the same levels of quantity as the Golden Unity. This is apparently due to the very high standards the Crux places on growing these creatures, and as the attempt to not have, quote, undue corruption, unquote, of, quote, human bloodlines, unquote. Grafting onto humans themselves, even in terms of deliberately creating frayed, is heavily regulated, and this is done in an attempt to avoid the deviations that are seen within the Liao family. Ironically enough, the Salages are also frayed.
Liao just can't catch a break in any universes, and it always sucks. It always sucks.
Just not visibly so. Meaning the Crux are a band of hypocrites.
Of course.
So, it's basically just Battletech as usual.
Unistar Ascendancy.
The most dramatic change
I love the fact that there's chanting now.
to the whole of this setting
This is the what is this song? Oh my god.
is not the Abominations, nor is it House Salage coming into the control of the Free Worlds League. More than ironically enough, it is the fate of the former Terran hegemony, Comstar. For those of you who have read the original Comstar sourcebook, or watched my video on the origins of Comstar, you'll know there are two paths the organization could have made, in a vital meeting that took place after Jerome Blake's death. One option led to the Comstar we know of in the setting. The other is heavily reflected here, provided it could have been pulled off. Terra, home of the human race, sits naturally at the heart of the human sphere. No matter how far and wide humankind spreads into the galaxy, this is the world of our birth, and the source of all we have built, all of our good, and all of our evil.
Yay.
In the aftermath of the collapse of the Terran hegemony and the beginning of the Eternal War, Jerome Blake was the last major official remaining within the structure of the rotting corpse of the Star League. The Minister of Communications essentially had the authority to use funds still available to him to rebuild the HPG network.
Okay.
This evolved into Blake attempting to help the people of the now exhausted, destroyed hegemony as well, but particularly on Terra. Earth, if nothing else, had to be saved. Together with his right hand, Conrad Toyama, they did their absolute best to try to restore what they could with those left behind. Be they the common people or the remaining leaders of industry. Just because everything was in ruins didn't mean that the clock stopped. Interstellar communications within the hegemony started to come back online, while Blake and Toyama managed to convince the majority of Kerensky's peacekeeping troops to remain. Kerensky, of course, was the former head of the Star League Defense Forces, who had been dismissed by the Star League's ruling council after the Amaris coup. This was made possible because Conrad Toyama had convinced Kerensky's deputy, Aaron de Chevier, to stay behind. This in turn helped them encourage over half of the SLDF to remain in place, even if the other half still departed for deep space.
Okay.
With this act, and with the former hegemony being slowly restored underneath the Great House's noses, the United Assembly of Stars was given life. This patchwork of local leaders, corporate heads, and minor agencies barely had a functioning government in its first few years. With Toyama and Blake being entirely dependent on de Chavier to protect them from the brutal incursions from the outside.
Huh.
However, tragedy befell the fledgling realm when Jerome Blake died in 2819.
Oh
But
no!
despite this, his legacy was felt, as he and his comrades had built up the Assembly into the Unistar Ascendancy.
So, we had the Space Amish, they died. What are they being replaced with?
Led by neither a hereditary ruler or the tragically incapable democratic system of the Terran Alliance, the Ascendancy instead is an evolution and refinement of the situation that first emerged when they began to come together.
Okay.
It was an alliance of interwoven conglomerates and political entities, tasked with ensuring the safety, well-being, strength, and productivity of the planets once claimed by the hegemony. But truly, after Blake's death, the greatest shift happened when the Unistar state developed a spiritual core that it is not shirked from since its inception. Toyama deemed Blake a prophet and a saint for all of the hard work he did to save the people at the heart of human space. Blake became a central religious figure for a new form of distinct faith, and it was built around the mass release and marketing by Toyama and the central authorities of what they called the Word of Blake.
Oh boy.
This
Oh
was a
boy.
philosophical, political, and human interest essay written by Blake himself, supposedly, prior to
Supposedly.
his death. In speeches and events after this work was released, Toyama would often attempt to marry the subjects of the day to Blake's wisdom or teachings.
Okay.
When Toyama died, the Unistar Ascendancy was in the midst of an economic boom, despite the fighting ravaging human space around them. The HPG network itself, though, was never reconnected to the other warring states, as any attempt to do so often had political problems associated with it. Still, the military was reformed. Grafting was adopted in some areas where needed, and the Blake Institute of Terra was established.
Oh boy.
50 years after his passing, it was discovered that the majority of Blake's works were, in fact, Toyama's own writing.
Oh,
The
really?
scandal was immediate, but the spiritual movement was already too far along. People tested these beliefs. They examined the arguments of the work associated with the Word of Blake,
Of course.
determined that these words still held true.
We've investigated ourselves and found that we did nothing wrong.
They still improved their lives. It still shielded them from the darkness wrapping around all the other great powers. It did not matter who wrote it in the first place. With time, the Word of Blake was reformed into the Word of Toyama.
Okay.
This then resulted in the Ministry of Terra Noir, which went on to absorb the Blake Institute, and solidified the military and spiritual order within the center of human space.
Oh boy.
Jerome Blake is an important figure still in the state's history, but it is the Word of Toyama that is the fundamental underpinning of the nation. Structurally, the Ascendancy is fascinating in that it has no official noble class,
Okay.
and instead it is a corporatist state. It is described, frankly, as a corporate theocracy, in fact, as it is functionally governed by Terra Noir.
Oh, that's a horrifying government thought right there. A theocratical corporatist empire. Pay your bills, fucko, just got a whole different meaning. Are you kidding me? Now it's no longer just pay your bills or bad things are going to happen. Pay your bills or you're going to hell. Wow.
Shadow committees make the most important decisions, and often it is simply the will of the ministry that drives policy across the realm. Even high-ranking offices are simply chosen by committees, making reliable members of the most faithful, the most likely to achieve any form of power in the system. But even these appointments are simply the will of the elements behind the scenes. The very primus omnium, the highest-ranking official, is an appointee selected by, you guessed it, a committee. The Empire is the most industrial and technologically sophisticated across human space, despite the endless war, and this is maintained at all costs by the central authorities in order to keep the corporation safe. They
Yay.
very much, of course, also believe it is them versus the rest of mankind.
Of course.
In terms of individuals, culturally, the nation focuses only on individualism and initiative as far as they can benefit the wealth or well-being of the USA and the Ministry's word. Thought or expression that exceeds the realm's stated policies risks condemnation or accusation of heresy. To be clear, that is a bleak fate for anyone to find themselves in. Still, despite living in a literal faceless police state, people's lives are relatively stable, and they have the highest standard of living within human space.
Oh.
In respects to grafting, humans regularly receive grafts, and it is broadly accepted in the Ascendancy.
Okay.
Interestingly, while other countries use abominations for civilian sector jobs, in the Ascendancy, these are limited only to military or security applications. Any human who is grafted also must go through routine genetic testing to ensure that they avoid, quote, corruption, unquote. Those whose genomes stray too far from the baseline are considered frayed and are reassigned within society. This is corporate speak for them being placed in terrible conditions or for them being sterilized.
Oh.
Some, however, are also placed into military units where they are considered exalt. Exalts are also deliberately made as well by the military. When it comes to the army, the USAG, or the Unistar Ascendancy Guard, are the security forces of the corporate state and are well regarded in terms of their advanced weaponry and technology.
Right,
Recruitment
Mathis.
is done across society by aptitude tests, as the population are in essence all employees rather than true citizens. People are assigned to their best roles, and should the military need more bodies than they have, people who scored well enough to be in the army but are in other fields are simply pressed into military service. There are no shortfalls that the USAG will ever feel in this respect. And the Unistar Ascendancy is thankfully watching over all of its citizens.
Of course.
And watching very carefully what they do. I've only touched on the really basics of all of the lore and history surrounding the setting, choosing to just focus on the 6 major states and some of the biggest divergences of the history in the setting.
Oh yeah, brother.
The Marauder states, Privateers, and Periphery all have some kind of role to play in this as well. This has been richly populated by effectively a 70-page primer that is basically a source book. It's genuinely quite the document. But with all of this done, let's go over the actual box.
What's in the box? What is in the box? Let's go.
So, let's get started.
Let's go.
Yes, this box, of course, comes in standard plastic wrap. You'll need to get through that to enjoy the product. The front of the box has beautiful artwork on it, and the back of the box gives you a detailed description of what's inside. It's a really big box, about twice as thick as a game of Armored Combat. Opening it up, the first thing we're going to see is a double-sided paper map sheet. This is also the standardized way to play classic Battletech. For those of you who want to play this with Alpha Strike, this element of the product is not necessary.
Okay.
Next up, we see the Gothic Premium Unicards.
Yes. I do believe that the Space Mennonites have been conquered by the Space and... I don't even know what to call them, man. I don't even know what to call them, okay? They're not the Space Mennonites. They're not the Space Mennonites. I just don't know what to consider them at the end of the day. Like, so what are they really? They're not the Space Mennonites. I can't even come up with anything. It's ridiculous. Let's go. It's like the militant wing of the Salvation Army or some shit.
These are the stat profiles for all of the various units within the box.
Big Red!
Starting with Abominations and also including the Battle Mechs too.
Uh-huh.
Here's also a short story written by Herbert Bees named Reclamation and Rise. Herb is also the one who wrote the entire backstory for the Gothic setting.
Okay.
Something I did not expect to see, and is a real delight, are that there are decals within for adding cool symbols to your units.
Okay.
Normally you need to get decals from places like Fighting Piranha Graphics to get unit insignias and things like that. So this being included within the box is pretty neat. Here is something I never expected to see too. Sprues. Plastic sprues. These are for the Atlas, and it includes a bunch of them.
Okay.
Mix and match or choose the options you want, But yeah, it's the Atlas's alternate parts. That's actually really cool to see. Unit cards and dice follow up, pretty standard. Then we're into the miniatures.
Okay.
First up is the half-assembled Atlas. One thing to note, these are a larger scale than standard Battletech miniatures, as they do have more detail on them, but I will get more into that later.
Okay.
Next up, the Phoenix Hawk. Very cool.
What would it be named in this universe?
Marauder? I love the Marauder in this set.
I will always say I love the chicken walkers more than any other kind of mech. I really just have to say that. The Ebon Jaguar, Timberwolf, Marauder, I love those types of mechs. Even the Locust I like more than like the other standard humanoid types of mechs.
I can see a ton of people using this also as a stand-in for the Black Marauder on their tables, too. Everyone knew that an urban mech was going to be in a box of this much class and importance.
Yes!
I'm sure. It's actually
To the trash
really
can.
redesigned from what I can see in total. It's quite a difference between the two versions. I really love the reimagined Rifleman here too. They did a spectacular job with it.
Yes.
Firestarter,
Bushwhacker would be considered a chicken walker.
amazing. I love the FS9 series, and this reimagining in the box is very cool. Easily the least impressive model in the product, easily the worst performer in the box too. It's kind of a shame that they included the Scorpion for a lot of reasons, some of which I'll go over later. Finally, in my opinion, the real star of this set, the King Crab.
Excellent
What a
shot for the
fantastic
crab.
miniature and design. I really mean it. This is the primary piece in this entire thing I wanted to see, and it looks amazing. Getting past the mechs, the rule book's next on the menu. Pretty standard in any Battletech box, though this one will also cover abominations and quads. We've also got the full primer in here too, which is super in-depth for a primer. It's basically a softcover sourcebook.
Okay.
Catalyst also included a full cool-looking map, which I think is really awesome. And on the back, it covers all of the abominations and is very well done. After this, standard stuff. Quick guide, terrain placements, and cardboard cutout units and abominations. And there, my friends, is the entire box of Battletech Gothic.
Okay.
This was the prime reason all of this lore and everything was put together. It's right here.
So, what did you think?
So what do I think overall about Battletech Gothic? Well, there are two sides of it.
Alright.
There is the lore and the world building and the setting, and then there is the box, which is legitimately two different things. Let's start with the lore because I think that's a bit easier to put together my thoughts on. Herb actually did a really good job. Even though I'm, of course, a House Merrick fan, who get absolutely screwed, it's no different than the canon timeline. It's just earlier. So,
He's not inaccurate. He's not inaccurate at all. I mean, at least Liao isn't having a good day. They got turned into snake people.
Merrick never comes out on top, I guess. But in all seriousness, I really enjoyed all the swerves that changed the politics in each realm. Like, there isn't one where I was scowling or whatever. It was well thought out, it was fun, and each remade house feels unique, but still captures the essence of what they were. It's just grimmer. Also, before anyone gets really upset, no, this is not anything like Warhammer 40,000. It is a grim-dark interpretation of Battletech. It doesn't share any DNA from the other side of things, even if there have been some jokes or misunderstandings to the contrary.
Now, at first, I thought that that's exactly what this was going to be. I thought that was exactly what this is going to be when I first saw some of the artwork artwork I was looking at. But aside from the fact Karita looked like it was fighting the Crute and the Vespid, a lot of this is pretty much just all kind of a, wouldn't say original because I definitely see some influences from a couple of franchises, but yeah, I'm more than happy with what I'm seeing here.
There are no demons. There is no warp. There is no God Emperor of mankind. Even visually, Battletech Gothic definitely takes
Liao's
more
Liao,
cues
Captain, yeah.
from things like Doom than it does from 40k. There are more grimdark things out there than just Games Workshop. The abominations themselves play a major role in the setting, and they've definitely been set up to be like a kaiju style thing, which is fine. I don't mind it per se, but this isn't actually the most interesting point for me.
Okay.
I do really enjoy the body horror elements that they've added to the humans though. Seeing these misshapen poor bastards in the art, or smug recreations of mankind through other means like the Liao artwork, that was really fantastically done. So, on the lore front, I'm definitely going to give them a huge plus. It is its own thing. It's a unique take on Battletech. And even without the grimdark elements, it'd be a fantastic what-if for the Inner Sphere. I am also going to add, the Unistar faction is amazingly based, and is the most unique thing in the entirety of the conception behind this. Really excellent job on Herb's part, putting it all together. So what about the box? What about the box? I want to start more with the resource side of things, from the consumer end, and pointing out that it is more expensive than a game of Armored Combat. But that does make sense. It is quite literally a thicker box, it includes more stuff overall, and it has bigger miniatures than normal Battletech. More on that in a moment. I think it's a great collector's piece. It's a fun side box if you want models that are really beautiful and look different.
Okay.
Or you want something that's kind of just more unique looking compared to something else in your set, or just something else compared to the rest of Battletech. And they've got some fun configurations and whatnot in this as well. I think the quality of the models are probably the highest I've seen from Catalyst in terms of cast quality, sculpt, and design.
That's
Overall,
always nice.
I'm really impressed with this side of things.
It's always nice when you get that kind of endorsement going back on a product. I just remember when I was doing miniatures, when I was painting my very, very fragile and easy to break miniatures for the Sisters of Battle. It was painful.
I'm also impressed with the primer, obviously, and I think the box is a winner in a lot of respects. But what about the abominations? How are their rules, you may ask? They've been broken into multiple size categories to start with, ranging from battle armor to mech-sized monstrosities, basically. Regardless of size, from what I can tell, they only have one set of health pool pips, i.e. no damage locations. They also do not suffer from heat. Beyond that, they function a great deal like similar units. I'm sure there are some things I've missed, but they seem fairly well balanced overall from my reading on them. They definitely don't feel as sturdy as mechs overall, though. Oh, and they can drown, which I think is incredibly amusing for some reason. I don't see much game breaking here, though I've only had one pass through over the rules and haven't exactly dwelt on them. The one downside, I'll say, is for gameplay purposes, the model scale is a bit wacky. As in, they really do struggle to fit in the hex-based system of Battletech at their current size.
Okay.
At least in my opinion. These are unlikely to line up with other mechs quite so easily if they come into base-to-base contact with another unit, especially bigger ones.
Epic.
And the CGL mechs are...
No, he was talking about the abominations epic.
They kind of push boundaries of what a hex map can really do. This won't matter for most people, of course. But I will say I do consider this to be some small level of inconvenience on just using them on the gameplay side of things.
Okay.
Them being slightly out of scale as a whole makes them feel more like miniature statues to me, and that's absolutely okay. Also, as a note, these are still absolutely playable, to be clear, but they're just not ideal in this respect, at least in my opinion. The models themselves, again though, are absolutely gorgeous. Just as a collector's piece, I'm very happy to have them. I'm curious in terms of how popular the box will be overall, and if this will result in more continuum products in the years to come. Overall, I definitely give the box a passing grade, at least as far as I'm concerned, and I would like to see more in this avenue, but we'll just have to see what the public reception looks like.
Sounds good.
I did not mind donating to the BCSPCA the value of this box in order for me to review it. It does feel like I got my money's worth out of it.
Yay!
So, to summarize, I think the setting is wonderful. and I think it is a great grimdark take on what a darker, body horror-inspired version of Battletech might look like. It also borrows basically nothing from 40k visually or narratively. That's something that I think has been a bit overblown, and I don't think many of the people saying that have actually explored the validity of such claims.
Yeah, so quite literally, if you look at it, as far as 40k influences go, the only thing that you could say that approaches it in terms of like looking like 40k is everyone seems a bit more militaristic, and so the armor of the mechs looks more militaristic. The base, the pictures of like bases look more militaristic, but that's not 40k. That's just militarism.
The abominations don't break the game system. The miniatures are gorgeous, and they really do push the boundaries of what CGL has put out so far in terms of quality, 100%. So yeah, there you are. I think it's pretty neat. I think it's pretty cool. I, of course, have a stronger preference for just normal Battletech. I think Gothic is an interesting and worthwhile thing. A fascinating sidestep from the norm. I also think the continuum is an exciting idea overall. And it's really an evolution on a lot of things CGL has already done, as we went over a bit earlier in the video. Just having options for radically different looking mechs, inspired by various different ideas, sounds really cool to me. Especially if it doesn't detract from the main line or products, or from the main setting.
Right.
And with that, so concludes my look at Battletech Gothic. Thank you all for joining me here today. This is the part of the video where I really do hate to do this, but I must remind you that if you enjoyed this video or found it informative, don't forget to hit like and don't forget to subscribe. Or if you
hit the like button, guys. So what do we think the clans are like in this timeline? Canon Crusaders will be a bit more justified here, but ones that fit in more. Okay. So from what he said, the SLDF didn't depart all the way. The SLDF didn't depart all the way. Point man, I couldn't paint it if I wanted. Like, even if I got it, I couldn't paint it. I mean, like, it would take me months to paint it just because the way my arm is working. If the clans invaded, it would either be one of two things happening. One, the clans don't even appear to begin with. Okay? Either they don't appear to begin with because something blessed happened and Nicholas Kerensky died, or they do invade and we're looking at a much, much more centralized, stronger clan. Like an actual, instead of so many clans, you only have a few, and they're larger and more powerful. 2 words, spray paint? Yeah, point man. We'd have to see about that. I just don't see the clans doing that much in this particular universe. And the reason being is it's much more highly militarized, and there is no second secession war. There is no second secession war. And if you don't have the second secession war, you don't have the massive loss of technology. And if you don't have that, then the clan invasion isn't nearly as potent or powerful. Just saying. Just saying. Tensu, I'd argue that the people that are all over-exaggerating the 40k comparison, it really does flat out not remind me of 40k. Okay? It doesn't. Whenever you hear Grimdark, the first thing you think about is 40k. But the truth of the matter is, this isn't 40k. This is not 40k at all. The only things that are remotely, in terms of appearance-wise, is something like. So you take a look at this. Everything looks more militarized. That is the big difference here. the mechs look more militarized. That urban mech down there burning that looks very Cornish, but at the same time, you can't just see red and go, red ones go faster, Cornite, here we go, boys. You know what I mean? Now, I really want to know why and how House Liao managed to recruit Zilla from the Godzilla movie from Matthew Broderick. I'm just saying. I see this, now you can't unsee it, okay? Now you can't unsee it. Congratulations. And of course, you got artwork like this. People see that and they're like, oh, it's 40K. It's not. It really is. It just is not. And then I see this king crap and I'm like, awesome. Okay? Awesome. Guys, I'm not getting the 40K comparison here. I'm just not. Yeah, it defined the grim dark. Exactly, Mathis. It defined the grim dark genre. It really did. The whole thing saying grim dark is flat out it's just a direct reference. Grim dark, the grim darkness of the far future. Okay. It is funny seeing Comstar being isolationist. It's not even close. But the best for me was Steiner putting gold on their mechs. Really, bruh. Doesn't surprise me that the Davians are doing Davian things. It doesn't surprise me the Steiner's doing Steiner things. Glory to Merrick. Death to Merrick. Guys, thank you for watching with me. Head on over to Big Red's stream, because I've got a feeling he's probably live right now. Tell him hey. And, guys, we'll be back on Friday for shenanigans. I hope you guys have a great night. And this is not 40K. It really, really is not. There's a subsection of Battletech fans who don't like 40K because they don't like the Inhuman element. That's true. And you know what? Some things are just not for everyone, okay? Some things are just not for everyone. Some people really love franchises that I just, like, I look at it, I see what's in there, and I'm like, it's really not for me, you know? It's really not for me. And that's okay. That's really fine, you know? You're not going to love every franchise that you see. You're just not going to love every franchise that you see. And your favorite franchise is going to be someone that somebody just can't stand. That's fine. It's not their thing. Let them have it. Let them have it. Because at the end of the day, what's fun is not the fact that, oh, my franchise is so much better than you, or my franchise is so much better, or blah, 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 blah. Hey, you have a nice night, random. To be quite serious, it's the love of the game and the enjoyment of it. Like, I love 40K. I have loved 40K since I got into it. I'm not a fan of fantasy. I'm not gonna say I'm not a fan of fantasy, because I like fantasy as much. I like Warhammer Fantasy as much as I would like any other fantasy genre, like D&D or Dragonlance, of which Dragonlance was my first real franchise that I really, really enjoyed. So when I say I'm not a fan of fantasy, it means I'm not as much of a fan of it as I am 40K. We're talking a much, 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 much different level of enjoyment that I've gotten out of 40K than I have any fantasy genre I've ever looked at. Warpugs, I'm gonna head out of here. I hope you guys have a good night. I will see some of you for shenanigans on Friday. Warpugs, have a great rest of your week, all right? Later.